Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending when you're listening to this. Episode 6 of Talking Heads with Buckinghamshire Business First. I'm Daniel Cope, the Climate Change Programme Manager at BBF. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be sitting here with my guest today. She is Jo Fairley, a trailblazer within her industry and within many industries, gracing us with the first fair trade marked product in the UK with her organic green and blacks chocolate back in 1994. Since then, she's not only gone on to grow a brand recognised across the world in green and blacks, she's also responsible for the Beauty Bible and most recently the Perfume Society. All the while championing women in business, environmental protection and social rights. Jo Fairley, welcome to Talking Heads.
Lovely to see you, Dan.
Thank you. Right, so let's kick things off. Back in 1994, I was 5, with the first fair trade marked product in the UK. I think that's the very definition of a trailblazer. And I wonder, Jo, what were your priorities at that time in creating green and blacks, and where did those values come from?
In fact, rewind 3 years, because we
Please.
launched the first organic chocolate in the world in 1991. And Maya Gold came about because we needed another source of supply, because there was a political uprising where we got our beans, and we ended up buying cacao from farmers who we'd met on holiday in Central America. And to be honest, we didn't realise we were trailblazing. Those values that are embedded in green and blacks today, sort of fairness to producers and environmental responsibility and sustainability, etc., those really are Craig's and my values. So we didn't realise we were doing anything weird. It was only with hindsight that we realised that we probably were trailblazing. But I always look back, I think my values came from watching Blue Peter as a kid, because it made me a kind person. It made me think about other people and think about the environment. And the legacy of that programme is immense. And then somebody gave me a copy of a book when I was about 13 called A Shopper's Guide to Saving the Planet. And really I was off, basically. I was on a mission.
So it sounds you were very much inspired throughout childhood, but it seems you kind of had those intrinsic values, I'm guessing, within you. You must have, if that's kind of how you developed with them. So that's fantastic. And so a second part to that question is, here we are perhaps 28-ish years later in 2022. Have your values changed at all? Are you still kind of guided by them? Or have they? Yeah, please.
They haven't changed. I think that what is heartening is the fact that, I think particularly over the last 2.5, 3 years, when people have had time to think, lots and lots of time to think, more and more people have really realised that the impact of what they do on the environment, and have decided that they actually want to minimise that in some way. But it's not always easy, and I think that's why I really welcome this Net Zero MK initiative, because that hand-holding for businesses is really important. You feel like a little lone salmon swimming upstream sometimes. So to have support like that is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. We find with our business members that often that perhaps isolation can be quite overwhelming, and it can seem like an impossible task. And actually, with just a little bit of guidance, we often say, it's the perception of the obstacle rather than the obstacle that we often find.
Indeed.
So that's brilliant. So, you, of course, we've faced some awful events in the past couple of years. I don't even have to list them. I will for prosperity, as I'm sure people will listen back to this in years to come, Jo. But we've had disruption through Brexit, we've had COVID, of course the tragic invasion in Ukraine, and the global impact on energy costs. When it comes to business, would you say you're an optimist for the future? And does that optimism extend to the efforts of businesses tackling climate change?
Yes, I'm actually much more optimistic that business can change the world than government, because I think it can react to market forces much more quickly. Government has to really, it's like turning around a battleship to get laws changed and so on. So I'm very optimistic that agile businesses can find solutions to a lot of the problems. What I'm keen to see, and what I'd love to come out of Net Zero MK is more collaboration. We we've gotten used to the idea in business that we have to be competitive. We have rivals, we have enemies, and actually to find solutions to some of these problems that we're facing, whether it is transportation or energy uses or water usage or whatever, sometimes the collective power is much more powerful. And so I would like to see more businesses getting together to find solutions together so they're not working in silos, because I think it will come about more quickly if that happens. But yeah, I am an optimist. I mean, I think I have to be an optimist, definitely.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
No, well, it's interesting that you say collaboration, because I hear you, and of course we can understand the benefits there. But on kind of the other side of the coin, if you as a business are doing something good, and perhaps if you have that competitive advantage, what benefits are there then in collaboration? What if you're leading the pack here in the environment? So
I'm thinking the thing that I would love to see most, and I'm throwing this out as a business idea, is, you look at the M25 or you look at the M1 and you look at the M4, and they're full of empty lorries that are going back from whatever they've delivered. Now, there must be a way to optimize the use of that space and do kind of reverse logistics to get someone else's product from A to B or whatever. So I think it would be a huge contribution if there weren't empty lorries going around all the time, because, M&S or whatever won't let anyone else's stuff in the back of their van. Or not even M&S, but, many, many smaller companies who perhaps are more flexible. So that's what I mean about collaboration, for sure.
I understand. Yeah, no, and absolutely. I think one thing, again, it's that it's one way to remove the barriers of isolation, isn't it, for these businesses? Of course, it's very topical at the moment, the economic situation. Only yesterday we saw inflation sitting at over 10%, the CPI in the past 12 months. Is now a good time to be innovative? Is now a good time to tackle net zero to, save the planet? Or are businesses best sticking to what they know? They're tried and tested.
What I've seen over the years is that, when you save resources, you're generally saving money. So, that thing of your mum always telling you to switch the light off in your bedroom and not leave your record player on or your CD player or whatever, she was absolutely right, annoyingly. And so what I see right now is that people have kind of gone, oh, actually, mum was right. If I turn those lights off. I mean, one of the things that bothers me in this country is if you go to France, every single lavatory that you walk into, the light goes on automatically when you walk in, and it goes off automatically when you walk out. That is not the case across the UK, but it's completely universal in France. I mean, that in itself is a saving in energy, which translates to a saving to the bottom line. So although sometimes there's, capital expenditure involved in embracing these solutions, the payback can be quite quick. And, as I say, the one silver lining to the cloud of the energy crisis for me is that it has actually got people to think in a way that they really haven't done up until now.
I think historically, wrongfully, but there was sometimes that argument put forward that, to do the green thing will cost, and therefore we won't do it. And I think absolutely one thing we're seeing is this real shift now in understanding, due to the visible impact of those energy bills, that this is, this really is a way that businesses can save there. And I will just have a little plug, as you've nicely led me in. You said about capital expenditure. To all our listeners in the region, we do have the Low Carbon Workspaces programme, which actually provides about 45% of that upfront cost for businesses for installing some energy saving measures. So my team wouldn't forgive me if I didn't get the mention in there, Jo.
No, it's really important. It's really important. But you did mention saving the planet. And I find that is not a very helpful phrase. And I remember going to a Soil Association panel some years ago, and there's an amazing Indian environmentalist called Vandana Shiva. And there was this sort of question and answer session. And somebody said to her, Vandana, do you think it's too late to save the planet? And she just said, the planet will be fine without us. It's like, oh, okay, I get it, And even
switch.
though I'd been kind of eco-minded from the age of 13, I suddenly realised in sharp focus that what we were talking about was the survival of the human race, not, looking after this rock that's we happen to live on, because the rock will still be there, but it's whether or not we will. And I do feel that adds a sense of urgency to the whole climate argument that's sometimes missing. We talk about saving the planet, but actually in reality it is saving the human race.
And now I think it's sobering, isn't it? I think we all often like to put ourselves at the centre of the universe, don't we?
We do.
Occasionally we have a stark reminder that we're not.
We could be the dinosaurs,
Absolutely.
We really could be the dinosaurs if we're not careful. And it's quite urgent. So I think there's no time to waste.
No, that's brilliant. And of course, it's clear the environment is a key driver for you, Jo. Not all business owners have that naturally. They may want to do the right thing, but they may not intrinsically see themselves in the hero role. Some of our listeners will think, I do care, but I have a long list of things I need to care about at the moment. Do they have to change their mindsets?
I think what's really interesting to me is, I work as a consultant to lots of different brands, and quite often I think there is an imperative now for brands and companies to be seen to be doing something for the environment. It's your shareholders expect it, your customers expect it, they at least want you to have taken it on board. What I really like actually is when a company goes down the path of becoming more sustainable for quite cynical reasons, like they've got to have something that looks good in the annual report, or they need to be seen to be doing the right thing. And what the marvellous thing that happens is whoever is engaged in that process, whether it's cutting carbon or whatever it is, becoming much more recycling conscious, looking at many different resources, they get changed by the process of, and usually in a really, really positive way, by the process of taking these issues on board. And that kind of ripples out into the organisation. And so I don't really mind if people go into it for cynical reasons because they feel like they have to, because the end result is the same, and cultures are changed within organisations and people feel good about what they're doing. They get out of bed with a little extra spring in their step, because I think we all want to feel that we're not just getting out of bed to make money for somebody. We want to make a positive difference in the world. So, that it's no reason not to go down that route. And I think peer pressure, is very, very powerful.
Absolutely. And you said that ripple effect within the organisation. And I think employees are an important part of the equation, aren't they? Have your employees who've, throughout your amazing journey to date, have your employees been an important part of that?
Completely. And actually, what we've done is we've magnetised the right sort of people. Because I think when you do have strong values and when you do have kind of a mission, people really buy into that. So we've always had an amazing talent pool to choose from, because, people want to come and work for us. And that's, it's because we stand for something, and they feel good when they get out of bed in the morning. So it can't be underestimated, that aspect of especially now, I think people are looking for meaning. They're looking for meaning in their life. They're looking for meaning in their work. And I think it was 83% of millennials say that they would rather work for an organisation that enables them to make some kind of environmental or social contribution. So that is a heck of a talent pool there. And if you're not taking those issues on board, you're stuck with the 17% sliver of people who don't really give a damn. And so I think that that's a very powerful driver as well.
Fantastic. And I guess the final part of that equation, beyond the staff, is actually the customer, the consumer, the person who's buying that product. So how do you identify the expectations of customers, and how do you kind of measure those changes in expectation? Is that an important element?
To be honest, we've never really done that kind of thing at Green and Blacks. We're not very big on customer focus groups and all that kind of thing. I mean, all my businesses have been driven by me putting myself in my customer's shoes and actually believing that I'm not that different to everybody else. So I'm not sure that that kind of navel gazing gives you a lot of information. And but it's clear, notwithstanding the cost of living crisis, that more and more people are asking questions of the organisations that they buy goods from, or the services that they expect now for companies to have looked. Here we have in front of us a recycled paper cup. They should all be recycled paper cups. We shouldn't be using virgin forests to make paper cups, and we should at the same time be offering people an opportunity to recycle them again after they've used them. I was very encouraged when I live in Hastings, and I came into Charing Cross yesterday, and there was a new recycling container as you came off the train that allowed you to put your coffee cup in that container. So it is happening, and I know it seems like a tiny, tiny drop in the ocean when you look at the world's problems, but when you add up all those little actions, they become quite momentous and powerful.
And absolutely. And then on top of that, I guess, the more of these little interventions that we experience throughout our daily lives, it has that cumulative effect, doesn't it, of actually making us more motivated, making us see what needs to be changed. It highlights it almost.
And it can be really overwhelming to take it all on board at once. It can be really overwhelming for a company or an individual. It seems like such a huge thing. But so just start small is my advice. Do address one challenge, one issue, and take it from there and build on it. Particularly, if you're looking at a small business where resources are always limited. I think I did about 7 jobs in the early years of Green and Blacks, and that's very, very common for entrepreneurs. It's fine for a big company that's got 5,000 employees. They've probably got a whole sustainability department, but it can seem very overwhelming. So my real philosophy is that this is a journey of 1,000 miles that begins with a single step.
Brilliant. And I guess is there a benefit to being small in that regard?
It was Schumacher who said small is beautiful, wasn't it? But yeah, I think that small organisations are obviously more agile because you haven't got to convince a whole load of board members or managers to do something. And that's why I think sometimes within a larger organisation, it can help to have a really small team that's just working on this, or who've probably juggling with their other roles, but it's something that they're interested in. You give them a little bit more time to spend on that aspect of their role. And then, as I say, that can ripple out into the whole organisation.
That's brilliant, Jo. And I could talk to you all day. The final question from me, though, Jo, it's a nice one, I think. When looking at your journey to date, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the way that our values did literally ripple up through we sold our business to Cadbury's in 2005. And Cadbury's was then acquired by Kraft, which became something called Mondelez. And, it's just when you think you've got a new owner, the goalposts move again. But we know that we influenced Cadbury's to put the fair trade mark on dairy milk because there was a dinner for the outgoing CEO, a guy called Todd Stitzer. And at one point he turned to Craig and I, Craig Sams, my husband, co-founder, and said, I want to thank Jo Fairley and Craig Sams for showing Cadbury's the way with fair trade. Wow. And I still get emotional talking about it now. And then that, in turn, rippled up through Mondelez, which is, vast global organisation, and led to the establishment of a program in West Africa called Cocoa Life, which is a $400 million investment that has just been renewed after 10 years with another huge chunk of money being put into it. And what that does is work on the ground, not just to train farmers to grow more cacao and better cacao and improve their family incomes, but works on the ground with lots of different charities, so Anti-Slavery International, Fair Trade Foundation, etc. But in the individual cocoa growing villages, those organisations will figure out what that community needs most. So it might be a school. It might be water infrastructure because, there are still huge numbers of children in Africa who have to walk 6 hours a day just to get water for their families. And they are out of the educational system because of that, because their parents are working, they can't do it. So a child is basically sacrificed to become the water carrier. So, putting a well or putting water infrastructure into a village is so impactful. And at the same time, you can't be part of Cocoa Life unless women in the community are financially empowered. So, for me, that's like a win-win-win. And the idea that, the head of Mondelez, when he announced this program, called Craig the night before and said, I want you to know what you've done.
Fantastic.
So, that's kind of, I couldn't ask for more.
I think that's a good thing to be proud of, isn't it? Jo, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and I know just how interesting this will be for our listeners across Buckinghamshire. For everyone else, if you did enjoy it, fear not, we have 5 previous episodes you can listen to, or you could just listen to this episode again. Jo Fairley, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Dan.